Hello and welcome to the PR Week, PR Week's regular weekly roundup of everything that matters in the worlds of PR and communications. My name's Steve Barrett, not Pete Barrett. That's my long lost cousin. I'm going to guide you gently through the next, 25, 30 minutes. Depends how it goes, but we've got a brilliant guest this week, so it's going to be a good show. And we're talking to Matt Harrington, who's Global COO of Edelman. So, Matt, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Pete. Steve. It's great to be here with you.
I said Pete because we're going to talk about Pete Davidson later from SNL. That's one of the stories we're going to cover. We're going to talk about client review season, loads of reviews on the go, lots of fun for the agencies, isn't it, Matt? And the evolution of the agency model. Martin Sorrell's had some interesting things to say about that. And a story our colleagues in the UK ran this week about the overtime epidemic in PR and what can be done about that and how big a problem is it, and is it a problem over here? And let's not forget our co-presenter, Frank Washkuch. How are you doing, Frank?
I'm well, thanks for having me on.
Are you over your little illness?
Yes. Well, I hope so.
Yes.
It's that season, isn't it?
It is. And we're back on Facebook Live, so hi if you're on Facebook Live. It won't mean a lot to you on the podcast, but if you are watching on Facebook Live, you'll be able to see how far Frank's luxurious beard has progressed.
Luxurious is not a term I hear for it often, but thank you for that.
They're all set up for the winter there, my friends.
Yes,
looking very Scandinavian. And
I just need snowshoes and
cross-country skis. Getting ready for Davos, yes. So, indeed. All right, Matt, let's talk to you. You joined Edelman, we just learned, 34 years ago, was it? So you've been there like man and boy.
Yes,
man and boy. Tell us about that. How did you join? How did it all come about?
Yeah, so it was, I had occasion to meet Richard after graduating from college, and he offered me a position as an AE in either the tech practice or the financial practice. And I had been an English lit major, and computers at the time was sort of a very strange, big, large box.
The size of this room.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I said, let's do this financial thing. And that
where
was the beginning.
That?
So it was in New York at 1775 Broadway. It was Edelman at the time didn't have probably more than 6 offices. The reception area at 1775 Broadway for us was a small cornered area filled with mirrors to make it seem larger, which I always sort of remarked back. It was just kind of hysterical.
The hall of mirrors.
But it was, we had 60 people in the office at the time, and it was just a bunch of mavericks. I mean, we were having a really fun time.
And Richard had taken over as CEO by this time, or was Dan still?
Well, Dan was CEO of the firm. Richard was running the New York office,
right.
and probably had been running the New York office at that point for several years.
Mm-hmm.
And we had so I joined in August, and July was the Olympic Games in LA, where we did the Shoot for the Gold campaign, and for Fujifilm. And that really put our consumer practice on the map in New York, and it was a game-changing moment for the firm.
Yeah, so I mean, you've got one of the best perspectives on what is the largest PR firm in the world now. Was it back then? It probably wasn't, was it? It was back then. It was Hill and Knowlton and Burson Marsteller.
Categorically, I mean, if we were in the top 10, I'd be surprised, frankly.
So what do you put that down to? Obviously, Richard took over as CEO in which year? Probably.
He's just cleared his 25th year, I think.
Yeah.
So somewhere in the 90s.
And I guess the firm was something like 170 million at that time.
No, he took over in 95 because I remember we had a meeting in 96 and Dan was chairman.
Yeah. So he's grown, since he's been CEO, the firm has grown to almost 900 million, getting towards the billion mark. A great success story. What do you put that down to? And he seems to be someone who has that relentless energy as well, and you've been with him side by side on every step of the way, so you must have a fair amount of energy yourself to keep up.
One tries to try to keep up. I think of the arc of Edelman's history as Dan built the firm with a very strong marketing orientation and discipline. When you think about Colonel Saunders and KFC and Orville Redenbacher and Sarah Lee and what really
Felix the cat.
Felix the cat running Morris the cat running Morris for president. These were and Zsa Zsa Gabor, we vened on Vine. These are some of Dan's great stories, but
and
they were
it's that time of year too when there was a turkey campaign, wasn't there?
Very good, Frank. Yeah. Thank you for that. So there's a plug for the Butterball Turkey Hotline, which this year is innovating yet again. So do ask Alexa about the Butterball Turkey Talk Line.
Yes.
You might get some immediate help.
And does the hotline still exist?
Yeah.
Yeah?
You can dial it up, you can tweet it up, you can Instagram it up, and you can Alexa it up this year. And so it's one of the campaigns that I view annually. I go to the team that runs it out of Chicago and say, what's this year's innovation? And if it's too early, they won't tell me because it's a kept secret, but it's the gift that keeps on giving. So, when I look at a simplistic breakdown of Edelman, Chapter 1, marketing. And that extended then into, the Advil RX to OTC, so healthcare then became a huge part of our business in the 80s. And then where Richard's stamp for me has been very much the corporate reputation, public affairs side of the equation and the global footprint. We had a London operation when I joined, and I believe we were in Kuala Lumpur, but we were just beginning to kit out more of a global orientation.
Globalization was a big part of that.
And Dan was the visionary and wanted globally. And so when you fast forward into ill justice to 65 years of history, but then you look at 19 years ago this January and Richard having the brainstorm to study trust. And so we'll have the 19th year of the Trust Barometer in January, and I think that took us to yet another level.
That's launched at Davos, isn't it, each year?
Yes.
And what do you think of the state of PR now? It's interesting, Golan recently did this campaign, didn't they, where they were kind of reaffirming, hey, we're PR people, we're proud of it, we're not shy to say it, we do PR and we shouldn't be ashamed of it. But on the other hand, communications marketing, whichever way the offer is, and you actually said that you came from a marketing background anyway as a firm because of some of the work you were doing. Where do you think we are as an industry in that dynamic?
Yeah, so I'm down to my final days as chair of the PR Council, which I've been for the past 2 years, and it's been a healthy conversation over the past 2 years, preceded and will continue, about where is public relations today. And my view is, that at the core of public relations is earned, and the power of earned, and what that enables us to do in amplification through social and through all the channels today. That is public relations. It is the heart of everything we do. So yes, we talk about ourselves and our ambition as being to provide communications marketing to our clients, and that's about helping our clients be as expansive as they can be in thinking about the ways in which we can partner with them. And public relations is very much in the part of that, but the real core is earned.
And you've actually hired over the last few years maybe 600 creatives to really beef up that side of your business, which inevitably is going to come with some cultural challenges, both from the creatives coming into a PR environment, but also for the people already in Edelman getting used to having creatives amongst them. And that's culture change. How's that working out now? And where do you think you are on the journey?
So I often have thought that the early days we were like the golden retriever puppy that was, with the paws that were too big and flopping around the room and trying to figure its way forward. I think we're now the adolescent dog who really is getting its stride and building and its muscle. I do think that we navigated cultural challenge with understanding the role of the creative, the role of planning, and how to build integrated teams. And it was as much a learning for me as anyone, because when I was coming along, I was to have the creative idea, create the campaign or the pitch it to folks like yourself, deliver it to the client. We were a full service team in ourselves. And now the world and just the complexity of what we're trying to accomplish for our clients and the complex world in which our clients live, we need expertise, we need specialization. And now I think we have a real handle on what is the role of creativity in planning, in programming, and how planning fits into that. And so everything I think we're doing for clients today, I believe, is much richer.
Now, we mentioned Butterball, and it's coming up to Thanksgiving. One of your more notable campaigns over the last few years was the REI Black Friday activity, which was a great piece of work. Talk us through that and how you, what's new on that this year, and how do you keep those, you talked about keeping Butterball fresh. How do you keep that REI idea fresh when, the big idea is kind of in the first year, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think it's then you figure out, once the mass have heard about it, how do you customize and tailor to keep reigniting interest and passion amongst customer. REI in particular has been focused on their employee population, and I think that's reflective of the fact that there's recognition just amongst all businesses these days about the power of the employee, to both as ambassador, but also because you want to ensure that you've got employer satisfaction. So I think this year you see a big emphasis as it relates to REI and Get Outside as telling the tales of the employee and how that's manifesting itself.
Are you going to be getting outside in this snowy weather in New York City?
I'm hopeful that today is an aberration as we see the rest of November. I will do a 5K on next Saturday as a
nice.
Thanksgiving tradition.
Okay. So you're the global COO, so talk a little bit about the global challenges, getting our network together. You talked about China. You've had your troubles in Russia, as have lots of other agencies. You've got the Middle East. You've got all these areas, all with their own very specific challenges. But you want to put that Edelman stamp on wherever you are. Talk a little bit about that and how you're challenging that over the next 12 months.
Yeah. So I'm in the 5th year as global COO, and what I most enjoy is actually getting out on the road, seeing the teams, being in the offices, and meeting with clients. And last week I was in Latin America, Mexico City, and Sao Paulo. And what's so interesting for me and gratifying is how much our offices are reflective of the local culture, absolutely, but they're also visibly and palpably Edelman offices. We all are working against Richard's strategic goal and ambition. It's manifesting itself or being delivered in pretty much the same way, with all of the complement of capability that we have in all of our offices. What's interesting to me is that where people hit speed bumps or they have challenges with integration of team or some of the other complex aspects of the work that we do these days, there's this immediate sense that this is unique. The challenge we're experiencing is unique. And one of the things I've been saying to offices as I go around the globe is you're not so special. That the challenges we all face are challenges because the clients are facing business challenges, and those are constant. We're living in a world of disruption. We're living in a world where the competition for our clients is really tough. And so in that, I want people to feel they have company, but also to know that there are individuals around the network who have likely already walked in your shoes and probably have come to the solution. So that's, I think, the power of the network also is we've got colleagues we can call upon to help troubleshoot, problem solve, and I think that's a wonderful thing for me to be able to prove as some of the connective tissue.
Yeah, I like watching Richard's selfies whenever he visits the office. He gets the whole office together, doesn't he?
Yeah, he took that, so I can't do that.
Yeah, that's his shtick. Yeah.
That's his shtick.
All right, well, look, we're going to pick up on a load of agency issues in our discussion, but it's good to chat and find out about your sort of history over the firm and the way you've been there step by step with tremendous growth, and congratulations on that. Frank, over to you. Client review season. There seems to be dozens of reviews going on all across the board. What's that all about? And tell us all about it.
Well, we're hearing about some big ones for sure, but one that recently happened was Whole Foods giving their AOR account to MWWPR. It's an account worth between $700,000 and $1 million per year, and it's a really interesting story behind the account in that Whole Foods used to have as many as 15 agencies or so working on different parts of the business, whether that was geographical or it was different parts of what Whole Foods does. And then they cut off those agencies around the time that it was acquired by Amazon. And so now they are going back into an agency relationship and working with MWW.
Okay. Do you want to chat about Kellogg's, or is that? Yeah, I didn't think you would know, but
let the clients speak for themselves.
Yeah, Kellogg's is up for. Matt, why are there so many pitches at this time of year? Is it basically because clients are doing their business planning for the next year, and that's part of that business planning might be that they look at their agency provision? What's the sort of...
I don't think there's any one factor, but there are a number. So one of them is fiscal year, right? So they're all in budget planning mode for calendar 19, and that sometimes triggers procurement to say, you've got a long-standing relationship, it needs to be put out for bid just to see if we're getting power for dollar, and you're getting the maximum return on that investment. So that's a combination of business factors, I think, driving it. I also think that because of the amount of change that's being experienced in the marketplace, clients are constantly checking and challenging themselves. Are they at the cutting edge? Are they really, benefiting from the forward thinking? And that causes them to be thinking differently about their partners.
Yeah.
And I think that's a logical thing. I think one of the shifts I've noticed in the last couple of years is a shift from retainer to projects. So clients are moving more fleet of foot, and inclined to want to be rather nimble themselves in their relationships. And so that's, I think, driving a fair bit of this too.
Does that mean fewer AOR assignments and maybe more of a portfolio of agencies, and where you have to almost jump ball pitch for each piece of work?
I'd say yes on the fewer AOR, and yes on the roster. I think once the roster's been landed, I see more agencies selected for, you're going to be our digital agency, you're going to be our community agent, and therefore less jump balls within the roster.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think Harold Burson once said that, in his time, the client would pick the agency and they'd stick with them, and it would be a long-term relationship. Whereas now it seems they do pitch more often. Do you think that is almost counterproductive in a way that in getting the best out of your agency partners, because they're concentrating as much on pitching for retaining the business as they are in giving the right advice or counsel?
Yeah, in a perfect world, you wouldn't have. I mean, from my vantage point, we wouldn't have the pitches. But I think a proper balance on that is that you are ensuring that everybody's on their toes, and always being. I like to think of ourselves in constantly prove it mode to our clients, so that they don't have to go to the pitch process. We're not always successful because sometimes procurement simply says, as a matter of business process, they are going to put it up. And I'm proud of the fact, we talk about Butterball, that's 40 plus years as a client. And we have a host of relationships that are 20, 25, 30, 35, 40.
Are you seeing much more procurement than you used to?
I wouldn't say more than the last 5 years. Right. I think it's a reality that we're all living with.
Let's go on to the next story. Frank, great sketch on SNL on Saturday night with Pete Davidson and Congressman Dan Crenshaw. Tell us all about that.
Yeah, so 2 weeks ago on Saturday Night Live, Pete Davidson mocked Dan Crenshaw, who was then a candidate for office from Texas. And Crenshaw, of course, wears an eye patch because he was a combat veteran who was wounded in Afghanistan. So the joke did not go over well. It was widely criticized. And so the next week, the apology from Davidson sort of included having Crenshaw on the show and him making fun of Davidson for a while, and the two of them agreeing that there are things they can agree on, for lack of a better term. And I think it went over really well. It looked good for Crenshaw. I mean, he's kind of having a national moment right now.
That's what he said, wasn't it? Thanks for making a Republican look good.
Yeah, and it even looks good for Davidson, which he could use a little of that nowadays.
Yeah, of course, he's
had a rough couple of weeks.
Yeah, he split up with Ariana Grande, his fiance, and one of the parts of the sketch was the ringtone, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Crenshaw's ringtone was an Ariana Grande song, which was quite amusing. And I must admit, I didn't know that Pete Davidson's father died in 9/11.
Right.
So that was a touching moment. I think the wider part of that whole conversation is this thing, we've talked about this on the podcast a lot, about the public dialogue. It's just got so egregiously nasty, hasn't it?
And toxic.
Yeah, it has. And in politics, on social media, it seems you can't have a different opinion to someone without getting into a fist fight almost, or a virtual fist fight. And it seems like it would be nice to get a bit more civility back into public discourse and politics. And really, that's about communications, isn't it, Nat? I mean, what's your take on it?
Yeah, so I agree with Frank. I thought the Dan Crenshaw moment on Saturday Night Live this past weekend was really extraordinary and well done. And he's followed it up with a brilliant Washington Post editorial opinion piece yesterday. And drew, I thought, lessons learned, what his own experience of the last couple of weeks has been, and agreement that, you know, there are some things in life that are probably off limits, and making fun of wounded veterans is probably one of them. And so I think that's wonderful. I also think that the Republican candidate for Senate in Arizona, and the way in which she congratulated the winner of that campaign, was very gracious, very human. I would love to believe that these two examples are a beacon of a return of some civility. I'm not that naive.
And she made a star of her dog.
Yes.
Too, which was a nice touch.
Yeah, it was a brilliant moment all around. But the fact that we have to talk about these two, that we have these two as examples to talk about, speaks to how down and negative our discourse has gotten. And so while I would like to be that optimist, I'm also keenly aware that we have some really ugly rhetoric around the election recounts going on in Georgia and Florida, and I believe that is going to continue to be at least the tenor that we're going to have to navigate over the next couple of years.
Yeah, Richard Edelman has said that, you know, in this environment, business has an opportunity to step in and be, you know, make statements about things and have a view and be a balancing element. And the trust barometer sort of shows the lack of trust in certain institutions and business as well. So,
well, if you look at Lorne Michaels, I mean, he is the business owner of the SNL franchise, right? Mm-hmm. And it was acknowledged in Dan Crenshaw's opinion piece yesterday. That moment wouldn't have happened without Lorne approving it and enabling it. And so I think, as a CEO of that franchise, he stepped in and said, we're going to make right by this, and we're going to set a civil tone.
Yeah. It's difficult for business sometimes, though, isn't it? Because you can step into issues and you've got a lot of different stakeholders and constituencies in your staff, in your customers, in your investor stakeholders. So you have to tread a very fine line when you're doing that and getting involved in debates like that.
Yeah, so my view is, you know, and guidance to clients is not to be partisan. You know, rely on your values. You know, when I was in Latin America last week, what I was so intrigued to learn was that in Brazil, business leaders actually publicly proclaimed their interest in one candidate or another. And that was striking to me, because we don't have that as a matter of the US election process. Because I do think that would be polarizing to employees to have their CEO out there under the aegis of their company saying that this is the candidate we most want. If you work to stay away from the partisanship but rely on the values of the company, I think a company's CEO can have an incredibly powerful impact and voice in the marketplace.
Do you think the media is too partisan nowadays, especially some of the, you know, the cable channels and the newspapers?
I worry about it. I do think that there's, you know, even with CNN this week and what you see with Jim Acosta and the lawsuit now, they're declaring war on the Trump administration. We know that they are asserted to have a bias, and yet CNN says they don't. And I do worry about this pitched battle that's occurring.
Though we should say Fox is also backing the lawsuit.
Oh, I hadn't
by
noticed
CNN.
that.
Yeah, so it's you know, I mean, it's an interesting case, you know. Where
Well, that's smart on Fox's part, because
Yeah.
you know, if so goes one, there goes the whole crowd.
Right.
Yeah, interesting stuff.
Yeah.
We could do a whole podcast on that one. But let's get on to the evolution of the agency model. We just had all the holding company Q3 financials. Martin Sorrell is out there, continues to be out there. His company S4 had its financials. Frank, talk us through that.
Yes, and Sir Martin is emphasizing the faster, better, and cheaper executions that S4 has been doing. Their revenue is up 46% year over year, though that's kind of a hard comparison to make between what they are now, and what S4 is now, and what S4
Is that organic, or does that include the acquisition?
It is organic.
Okay.
So, and of course they brought on Media Monks. They bought Media Monks this summer, and they're looking to buy another firm quickly reportedly. So in terms of the revenue, they're up to just over $30 million for the quarter. So it seems to be a productive quarter for the first quarterly report from S4. And look, obviously a holding company in the making to keep an eye on.
What's your take been on the whole sort of WPP and Sorrell thing? A voice for the industry, really. You know, one of the few people who actually talked about marketing communications from a wide point of view, not just from a company point of view. And what do you think of his faster, better, cheaper line?
So I'm intrigued overall because he has no obligation to be reporting, right? Privately held enterprise could be keeping his powder dry. I thought the characterization and the framing of the business.
Is it public? Did he buy? He got an off the shelf. I think he got an off the shelf public.
Everyone is looking at me, and there's no pressure at all. But
I didn't think it was public.
I believe they are private. At least I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Let me just say.
I mean, at that revenue base, you wouldn't anticipate it.
Yeah.
But well, regardless, I do think that the framing of the business in terms of social, the analytics piece, it was a tight definition, as opposed to the expansive we can be all things WPP, and maybe in that is a little bit of a window into the way in which he intends to take this business forward.
And I should also point out he took a shot at the WPP chairman, Roberto Corda, who has mocked S4 as a peanut, and then
Martin's a coconut.
Yes, he's a coconut, and you know, there's a bit about peanut allergies, and he still got it. So
it's one thing is it's funny because Martin is still a reasonable sized shareholder in
Yes.
WPP, and the share price is now a third of what it was. So he's not exactly helping his own pocket. Not that I'm sure he's short of a bob or two, but some people are now saying that WPP is in a territory where it could get acquired because its share value is so much reduced. And so it'll be interesting to see if anyone does step up and put a bid in for that, maybe one of the consulting firms or whatever. But on that topic, Matt, you know, you've always competed against all the holding companies, and your line has been that you're independent, you can work with everyone. We are seeing holding companies go in much more as a sort of integrated unit now with the media, creative, PR. Clients, some clients like that model, you know, the team Ford or the team Bank of America or whatever. How do you compete within that environment? You know, is that a threat to you? Or do you still see it as an advantage? What's your take on it?
It's all in the execution, and I think that's true for all of us. This, you know, are you able structurally, executionally, can you deliver for clients in a simplistic fashion? That's what clients want. They want simplicity, they don't want complexity. I believe that the Edelman platform, our independence is at the end of the day actually quite simple, and therefore we are able to move quickly and nimbly. I think that's what S4 is striving for there as well.
Faster, better, cheaper.
We have a business model that also is bottom up, if you will, in terms of where we are and what we've been doing over the last 65 years. I do think that the holding companies have many business models that they're trying to consolidate and or figure what that way forward is.
Yeah. Okay, let's finish on this story that the UK PRWeek in the UK ran about a study that showed an epidemic of overtime in the PR industry. Frank, tell us all about it.
So the study that our colleagues in London ran the other day found that on a daily basis, 27% of PR professionals in the UK are working unpaid overtime. The national average is 12%, so it's more than double the amount of a regular worker.
Is that, do you think, mirrored in the US, Matt? And is that just part of a service industry? I mean, journalism's not a 9 to 5, PR's definitely not a 9 to 5.
No.
I'm sure if we went around Edelman Towers at 8, 9 o'clock at night, there'd be people there just as there are here. You know, is that just part of modern work, or is it a problem that we are sort of grinding people into the dust a little bit?
Yeah, so when I saw this study, I thought that it is endemic to professional services writ large, and I don't need necessarily to see a US study or a Japanese study or an Australian study, because I think it would be borne out that we have we need to be mindful of overtime and what we're asking of our people around the globe. And some of it is, are we doing the best job we can in communicating our value to clients and being properly paid for that time? And I think we can always be doing a better job for that. And
So PR firms give away a bit too much for free, maybe compared to their creative.
I still worry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And or the clients value us differently than
Mhm.
some of those other creative agencies, and therefore we don't fully capture all of our time. You know, the one thing I also thought was what I hope is not a factor in this is that it's, you know, reflective. It's like the resident at the doctor doing his residency in the hospital did 36-hour shifts because his boss did 36-hour shifts back in the day. You know, I hope that we're not putting people through the paces because I had to be put through the paces when I was coming up in my career. That would, you know, that's just not, that wouldn't be right. So I you know, I don't know to the degree to which there's some inherited aspect of the sort of the slog within the PR.
Mind you, there was one other story in the UK about an agency going to a 4-day week and basically saying that to give more work-life balance to their people. They'd gone to a permanent 4-day week, and they were sort of talking about the origins of the 5-day working week. It used to be a 6-day working week, and I remember back in the day when everyone said technology was going to mean we'd all have to work just 3 days a week, and because of technology was going to take over a lot of the work, whereas actually we seem to be working more than ever. But even though technology is going to take over a bunch of our work, but yeah, it's I think there's no doubt PR people work hard. I mean, you can say that definitely. And actually, why don't we talk about our fun little Thanksgiving activity? Because what we're doing is when you go home for Thanksgiving or you speak to your parents, and do they know what you do for a living? You know, we often have this discussion. What do mum and dad think PR is, and what do they think you do on a day-to-day basis? So what we're asking everyone to do is to get, when they go home, or to do it by FaceTime or whatever, just ask your parents or family members in 1 minute to say what they think you do as a PR professional. And we want you to do those videos and send them in to us, and then we're going to put the best ones on our website or on our social media channels, and have some fun with it, but also make that serious point. You know, one, you work hard. I think they all know that, but also, I think PR, as a profession, we need to encourage the best people in, and if people don't really understand what it is, then it's going to be a problem, isn't it? You know, moving forward, and maybe in the past people haven't always understood what PR people do. The only question we have is what we're going to call that. So, what the bleep is? What was it? What the bleep is? What the bleep do you do? Yeah. Okay. So let us know if you think that's a good idea. I got shouted down earlier for suggesting it wasn't, so we might well go with it.
The fact that we're having to ask the question merits out the bleep, in my view.
Yeah. So that's a fun thing we're doing, and look out for that. We'll promote it on PRWeek and on our social channels. So yeah, listen, Matt, it's great to chat to you and find out more about your history and your views on the industry. Always great to hear what you've got to say, so thank you.
Thanks, Steve, I've enjoyed it.
Continued good luck. Couple of other housekeeping announcements. We've got our Hall of Fame dinner a couple of weeks on Monday, December the 3rd. Always a great night. We'll be honouring 6 more stalwarts of the industry: Harris Diamond, Dave Sampson, Joanne Bishman from Harley Davidson, Rochelle Ford, Lynn Casey from Padilla, and John Graham. PRWeekHallOfFame.com if you want to join us. Always a great night. We launched our Hall of Fame today. We've got a great new partnership with Step Up. Frank, do you want to talk us quickly through the new partnership there?
I'd be happy to. Step Up is a nonprofit that helps young women from underserved communities prepare for the professional world, essentially, whether that's through internships or professional training, public speaking, anything like that. A lot of the things you would need to know going into the professional world. So they're a good group, and we're happy to be working with them.
Yeah, so half of all entry fees to Hall of Fame will go to Step Up across PRWeek and our sister title, Medical Marketing and Media. So we're really pleased to be partnering with them. Our global awards are open for entries too. January 17th is the deadline for that, and they'll be presented in London in May, next May. So if you've got great global work to profile, make sure you get your entry in. The Brand Film Festival, the 4th year of that's been a great success. You've got till January the 14th to get your best brand films in. And do look out finally for our Bellwether survey, which we produced to mark our 20th anniversary here in the US, produced with Boston University. There's a premium edition with loads of great extra information in there that you can check out. Go and have a look on the website and get hold of a copy of that, because it's a real 1,500 PR pros profile, one of the biggest pieces of research done on the profession ever, and it's all proper data from proper practicing PR pros. So do check that out. But I think we've come to the end of the show. That's all we got time for. We'll see you next time on the PR Week.